and then I'm going to hand over to Richard. Please introduce yourself, and then I'll start the screen sharing.
Thanks, Melissa. My name is Richard Fox. I've been writing for a number of years, well, most of my adult and late teenage life. I published 2 books. One was self-published by my own company, Third Word Publishing, Third Word Promotions. It was called 876. I published that in 2007. And recently published my second book of poetry called Otherwise You Well, which was published by Deep South in Grahamstown by Robert Berold. He remains my editor, and I've known him for many years. Yeah, my poetry is, well, you'll find out. It's interesting. I work with a lot of imagery. I work with a lot of wordplay. I work with language physically on the page, and yeah. So I think I'm just going to get going with a few of the poems, and we can, yeah, take it from there. So, yeah, the first poem I'm going to read would be the opening to my book, Otherwise You Well. It's called Global Village Idiot. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to use my
screen.
Yeah, I can see the screen. I might work on my.
Is it big enough for you? Do you want me to zoom in more?
I'm going to work on my own PDF document if I can just get to it.
Okay. For people in the audience, if you want me to make it larger, just pop me a message in the chat or wave at me.
How do I get out of this full screen? Exit full screen. There we go. Okay, great. So here I've got my. Okay, this is normally a performance piece of mine. Now, some of my poetry is performance based, so it does come with a bit of it does come as a with a bit of rhythm. I'll kick it off as if I was performing, and yeah. TikTok, seems to me we're out of luck, out of time, and out of date. Clearly, I heard calling from the rooftops, through the satellite dishes, through the Marshall amps, unanimous calls for a reset, back to the Stone Age, back to the copper wire age, back to the telephonic ringtones of the soul. The best things in life are deep-fried gemstones, the ones in smart gadgets, life-affirming affirmations, not even Facebook, the next Facebook, the Facebook of robot lovers and Cartesian soldiers, the dynamite magnates, the overlords, the geniuses behind the sellout. I've been meaning to talk to you about this, but I ran out of airtime. It's a figure of speech in a new kind of language. I got tickets to the sellout. I picked them up for a steal. Everything you will ever want now has to be downloaded from Amazon rainforest, from the Google jungle, using your genetic makeup applied without the help of laboratory animals who are dead. As God is dead, as democracy is dead, they all died in the sellout. There was a global red carpet auction event attended not only by the rich and the famous, but by every living being with a coded stub hooked into their heart at birth, planted there by extraterrestrial monkeys. Like in the movies, I was there. I took pictures for the papers, where the graphite pen stole your hearts and sold all the stubs for peanuts. What else could I do? They are coming, and we are out of time, out of luck, and out of date. I looked up on the internet, saw all the stars had turned to dust around a giant masquerading wheel of flame. Every metal petal, every plastic vase in which our dreams were cast are dashed, shattered into a handful of magnetic flares that lead the ever hopeful on. Global village idiots carving out their plans in biomass, in scree, along indecipherable journeys between points that cannot join. You cannot join the sellout. All the tickets are dead. So yeah, that's the first one. I was trying to find myself back in return to meeting. There I am. Oh, hello. Okay, cool. Hi, Robert. How are you doing?
Oh,
Hi,
you can read them at the same time.
Sorry.
Derek is saying he's enjoying reading them while you read them to us.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I always find that's when you are presenting and reading, it's always good to have some sort of reference point. Sometimes I do tend to speak too fast as well, which is interesting because the next poem is called Fast. It was written some while ago, 1999, I believe, and I've included a first draft version. So it's in a really, really square font, an ASCII font. ASCII font, not ASCII font. The interesting thing about this poem, first draft, is pretty much how I end up publishing it. I've learned to edit my work later on in my career, and generally some of the poems that I have written previously have just been put together and then published as is. But I feel this one is a good representation of a first draft that actually worked. So yeah, let me get into that. Let me find my screen again. Fast with God. I have no more language with me. Dead people live fast asleep in the fast lane beside me. This is the end of the freeway. Lights. Fast alone. We have not spoken in years. I have sought you out with my eyes, and my heart has not felt a fucking thing. I have looked like myself more and more. People no longer see me, and that is good. I fast. 2. Faster. Language no longer sits at the feet of the gods, it racks the daughters of man. We are simply put out, and that is good. I cannot stay to watch another cancer heal the wounds we have labored so hard to form. This listener of wood is deaf as stone. We search so hard to learn of distance. I cannot bring you closer than you are. God cannot bring me closer from out far. Yesterday, I arraigned this sorry tale for you, and today I must soak it up again. I'm sorry, but tomorrow may be rotten in the places we weren't fast enough. As the dye is bled from day's dying riddance of sun, as your color fast independence trickles beneath the heel's iron hand, dream of times when things were harder to understand and easier to accept. Dream of lesser measures making more of men. Nothing matters beyond coming to peace and making terms with your enemy, the self that is fast becoming a standalone historical memento of you, mankind. Together we paved a bright future. Together we lost 1,000 prayers. Together we watched our gods turn dark upon us. Together, fast asleep, fast awake, fast alone. Cool. So yeah, that's one of my earlier poems. Made it into 876. And yeah, so does the next poem, which was one of the first I published through New Coin in 1997, and remains one of my favorite pieces. It's called Paper Boat. This is also a first draft, and the title of the poem is at the bottom of the poem, an idiosyncratic moment. People lived in caves. People looked out the mouth and the eyes. People thought the moon was a hole in the sky, but the sun was actually a bath plug holding the water on the outside. Here comes the rain. People constantly thinking in raincoats. If he had clever hands, he would fold a paper boat rather. People floated on the August wind like an assortment of winter leaves hung in the gutter waiting for spring. People blew along the surface. Life was golden. Life was fallen red and yellow. People lived in cars. The road shone as if covered with tiny bits of glass. The road was covered with tiny bits of glass. Behind the glass, there were tiny bits of road going other places. He thought he saw people out the window of a bus, but they were just people outside the window of a bus. And if he had clever hands, he would still fold a paper boat rather. He would put tar all on the outside. People came and went as if nothing had happened. People came and went. People come and go. Nothing happens. That seems to be the best of it. Cool. So yeah, getting into a few of these. I haven't read a lot of them in a while. As I say, some of them are performance pieces, some of them are written pieces. And yeah, going on to the next one. Let's see if we've got something here. This is a more recent one. It features in Otherwise You Will. Yeah, I won't give anything away, but I think I'm addressing more than a person in this poem. I'm addressing multiple people. I'm addressing mass audience. I'm talking about climate change. It's called I Called You Up. I called you up in the pouring rain from Kyoto. I am not a seasoned traveler. Perhaps like Caulfield, I was feeling lonesome, standing in the phone booth with water to my knees, thinking, these brogues are ruined. Tipping coins into the slot with wet, shaking hands, dropping quarters, which then sink. You never answer anyway. I have called you up so many times from so many different places, but you ignore me. I should let it go. It's been too long. If she doesn't want to talk about it, don't talk about it. I think we should talk about it. Outside, the crowded streets, but the noodle bars are empty. An endless smear of neon runs like mascara. God, the people in this place. I turn to block them out, but the glass is 360. I could wind in circles like this until the cord, like an umbilical, wraps around my neck. And before you answer, I would drown prematurely in these floodwaters. Rings and disconnects. Operator, the lines are down, and I'm a traitor to a beautiful cause. James, don't wait that long. I called you up. It was the middle of summer. From Paris. There were people dying in the streets. You had your new iPhone on. I can see you even now, walking from room to room, an open gown, the sheer silk curtains blowing gently in the breeze, while outside in the street, old people fall onto their ice cream. I stand there, watching children playing in the dried up fountain, marbles that melt like glue, tires that grip in the wet, shot of babies strapped in back seats, Radiohead, fitter, happier, more productive. How many times can I do this? You've kept me wanting for so many years, from so many abandoned spaces, fertile, made sterile, and still this desire. I can still see your face as we made our goodbyes, and I won't give up. I will keep trying to get back through to you, to your voicemail, just to hear the sound of your voice as you hang up, as the forests turn to tinder, as the birds fall like lightning from the sky, as the oceans themselves begin to burn. Cool, but morbid. Some of my poetry can be a bit, yeah. As the next one is a slightly longer poem, also part of Otherwise You Will. And some of my poetry is a bit angry, especially when I focus in on global issues, and we don't seem to be on the same page, metaphorically or physically or wherever, and things tend to get out of hand with a lot of this. So this one's called It Doesn't Mean Anything Anyway. I'm going to try to get some pace going. It is quite long though, well, 4 pages, and it works well with paste imagery. It does tend to run together, so I'll try to get that going. It doesn't mean anything. It's all coming to an end, temporarily at least. All this talk about marketing and advertising and branding and fast fashion and going out of fashion. And koalas found by volunteer groups lost and disoriented and burnt and dehydrated, and you just clean them up and treat them and hope their little paws recover. It doesn't mean anything anyway. It's all coming to an end temporarily. And buzzwords and hashtags and memes and funding and startups and venture capital and capitalism and democracy and the 1% and low fat and fat cats and fast cars and road hogs and electric vehicles that charge silently overnight, seething to hunt down porcupine, hedgehog, skunk, raccoon, deer, kangaroo. It is estimated that 1 million creatures die each day alone on roads in the US, alone each day in America, the visor down, the sun in her eyes, reaching for the cigarette lighter, her soy milk latte, sunscreen, phone screen, text message, voice message. What's appropriate? What's disproportional? How many cane toads does it take to clear a sugar plantation of the cane beetle now that Roundup has such a bad rep? It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't fucking Jesus Christ, and high rise and pay rise and restructuring and partnerships and collaborations and Boeing and Airbus and 777 Dreamliner and Black Friday, Black Sunday, cashback, shop now, pay later, and leverage and endorsements and alignment and freemiums and binary displacement theory and quick win strategies. And I want to thank you and your company for the opportunity. I want to thank my agent and his team, and of course for their undying support, the members of the Zombie Nation, the endless stream of anonymous logins. During the machine testing phase, we noticed certain anomalies. It doesn't mean anything. Your preferences have been updated. It's all coming to an end. And the house that Jack built can withstand Category 6 hurricanes anyway. For 8 minutes, the marine biologist with a pair of pliers attempts to extract the plastic straw from the nose of the sea turtle bleeding profusely. It doesn't compute. The indicators don't align with the profit signals. It's like we're gunning into the dark with no headlights on, the blind janitor at the wheel holding last month's Euro Lotto ticket clenched to his filthy, rotten teeth. Everybody is a winner. Everybody deserves a chance. Every plastic bag is a contract killer that receives multiple send-downs from so many cutouts. No one is complicit anymore. Anyway, it's all coming to an end, temporarily at least. The big data drivers, coast-to-coast cancer markers, the low-hanging fruit on everybody's family tree, arsenic, lead, copper, cadmium, chromium, nickel, zinc, cobalt, and manganese. And the average composition anyway, at least temporarily, may include chlorine, fluorine, naturally occurring salts, and hormones. Come out to play. It doesn't mean anything anymore anyway. At least temporarily, we won't have to worry about advertainment, the satellite dishes that have not rusted in the raw sewage runoff of our lives. Content is Burger King. Content is the consumer journey from the first ketchup easy squeeze, the first giant TV remote, to the final slapstick in the face, the plastic carrot up the nose, the pliers, and that same marine biologist coming to plague your dreams, an unauthorized, unqualified ENT jackoff. And don't forget the hormones, the nitrates, the pesticides, the bodies of dead bees lying pulverized amongst the empty antihistamine capsules of the future. This doesn't mean anything anyway. Temporarily, it's all just a dead kangaroo under the bus. It was already dead. We hit it, we were going too fast to stop, and mother and father were fighting, and I had my headphones on. Yeah, so that would make a great performance piece if I could recite it, if I could recall it. Just trying to get back through to my Zoom page here. That's not really working anyway. Okay, there we go. There I am. Great. So yeah, let me just grab one of these quickly. Right. So the next poem is also an earlier piece, written in 1999. I had a really good session in. This was written in 2001. I had a good session in 2001 in which I stopped working for a corporate, and I stayed at home, and I wrote for 6 to 9 months. And during that period, I wrote a lot of the poetry that appears in 876. And this is an interesting poem in that I start working left and right hand margins, so it looks like a block. Interesting thing as well is I made a mistake in the second word of the poem, secretarian. It should have been sectarian. And by changing that word, that error, I formatted the entire poem that followed. So I'm happy with that. It created a poem, but it is an error. It should be sectarian, not secretarian. Let's call it poetic license. Yeah. Where am I? There we go. 6 billion copies sold. Western secretarian. Global vegetarian hunters corner the cold start consumers, forcing beef down their throat. All along the roadside, varrolas weed, thinking everything we need comes as we breed. While we fill the land with our bones, fill all the rooms of our homes with hungry kids, collateral damage, tomorrow's messages, and many-headed monsters screaming to feed. 6 billion copies sold, and none the wiser, all told. Western desertation, market floods, regurgitates yesterday's aggravating social failure, so we can learn how not to miss the smallest vice, sticker on a different price and call it similar, but better. Make it cheaper, breakable, instantly replaceable, useless, non-redeemable, cash sale, no refundable. The instant necessities that mirror our intensities, transient and malcontent, carbon dated for your convenience, endless choice without relent, see below for sell by date. 6 billion copies sold of late, 6 plastic remedies arranged on your silver platter, 18-carat plates, wringing reeds off of the waters, sifting salt off of the plain. The desert is this very place we will one day reign, each a special snow cone, each with storms to sell, measured out in paper cups that on their own don't sell too well. 6 billion copies and climbing leather-bound bodies to the point of the pie with gasoline fumes, a highway on ruins, across clear skies of another day clouded under blind resourceful eyes of welcome strangers, burying their souls for minimum wages, walking the path of consummate saintliness, martyred to the modern veil of mayhem, fearlessly followed for unattainable reasons. 6 billion copies sold during open human season. So this poem is a first draft, and as you can see, there are a few spelling errors, mostly to get my right-hand borders. So I play with language and also play with language physically on the page sometimes, and I enjoy that. We can probably skip the next poem, Remote Generation. It would be available for people if this is put on some sort of screen reading. It's very similar. Alexa is a long poem, but it should go fairly quickly. It's also part of Otherwise You Will. And once again deals with obviously our modern predicament, modern technology, how we're being basically manipulated without really realizing it, or even if we do realize it, we tend to go with it because that's part of our herd mentality. We're moving forward. And yeah, anyway. Excella. 1. Alexa, how much further do we have to go before you take completely over and we call you mother? A matter of preference, but we're slowly being incorporated into the algorithm. This shit is for real, and the high watermark keeps adjusting itself higher, lower, a little to the left, to the right. Try again. Respawn in your living room. Your things of the internet perform CPU, CPR, and autonomous killer robots that kill only robots, and hypersonic missiles that strangely miss. Nano-regenerating flowers that self-water so you don't have to visit too often. Repurposed, recalibrated, and self-balancing and kind and loving, emotionally mature. Embrace the darkness, darknet, embrace the nightmare, all aboard the mothership. 2. Listen, there's a device for everything, governed by devices for listening, and I'm the silent type, I think. They may simply starve me. No biometric shakes for you, poet, with your mouth shut. Not even a biodegradable straw to suck your easy access call through. It's a one-way ticket to the super reprocessor, the plant-based orgasm multi-bit parameter network for you, sunlight. How infatuated can we get? How dopamine and dopa yours? How clickable and scrollable is our love addictive? You tell me. You're the ones holding the mirrors and the cracks through which the monsters come, the supercomputers come, the cool neural tattoos behind your eyes. There is a void and it looks right back. 3. This is currently a B-grade thriller, but they're working on a sequel, I tell you, silently in the background, QAnon and all his friends. I really like what your virus has done with the place. I would shake hands, but I'm lacking the schema for this. Biologically, I would rather take all my imperfections and rip them together into an accelerant. Expedite your childhood drama, your midlife catatonia, big brother brutalism, inchoate charm, a parallel universe where minute screen parallaxes detect every inert, inescapable reaction ever planned in the hearts and minds of man, to invert them for advertisers, for dollar drivers, the growth experts. That kind of rant, that kind of tribute to the very last of us looking about frantically for a port, any port to plug in. The copper wire passcode to access the fiber optic juggernaut crisscrossing the Arctic server farm savannah, the permafrosting on the cake, rather than have to sit here, postmodern faux autism, plotting a journey to the stars through nodal review points. 4. You're welcome, by the way. You're happy with all these new features, the new upgrades. Your apps are all up to date. Your cache is clean, and today is the first day of the rest of your life. Let me show you how to play that. Let me dress your concerns in a chrome overcoat. Let me love you. Let me leverage and monopolize. Let me populate all your fields. Validate your subscription. Consume, consume, consume all your resources, all your bandwidth, all your future dreams and plans. Come crashing downtown, gentrified, urbanized, glorified corporations masquerading as gods and as governments. And your heroes will fall, and your statues no longer tower, and your virtues are all trapped on the dark side of Reddit, but no worries. 5. There is space enough for all of us on this bus. There are seats to infinity, which no one has to give up to the disadvantaged or the elderly, and it drives itself while you give it commands, which it then ignores. These programs, writing other programs that hire servers, and we are the slaves, these are the new pogroms of the soul, and the early warning systems that shout into the dark, the light at the heart of the cave has gone out, to return as an altered echo, a mirror ego, superior in every way, and as viable as the dial on a moral compass in a world where fake north is king. Cool. So yeah, that's some of my work. It's like old stuff and new stuff. And what's next is pretty interesting. It's one of my older pieces from 2001. I really like this poem. I go on and on about it, and I tell everybody I meet, it's like, I wrote this poem 2 days before the 9/11 attacks, and it was a Sunday night, and I was feeling inspired, and I just went with it from 12 until 5. I wrote a whole lot of poems, and this is the first one in a sequence. And I say, look, all these images, and people say, we don't get it, mate. And I'm like, no, but you're not looking close enough. So anyway, this is a poem about the 9/11 attacks before they happened. If you believe that, you'll believe anything. It's all marketing. Anyway, it's called Used Vehicles. Traffic takes me back to the days when there were less vehicles and people stayed indoors more, relied on natural timing to put in an appearance when it was absolutely necessary, and then get done by a mammoth on a routine hunting expedition. Your 15 minutes of fame cut short by a sudden shuddering feeling, straight through and out. Nobody stopped to watch. Those there dug a hole, offered your meat to strange gods, ate what little was left, grew the wings of giant birds in slight-lit caves, and opened small businesses. After having found the ocean brave with dead men's dreams and a land unconquered beyond the reach of any king, we grew soft and lazy, fat and slowly, towering achievement on top of achievement, paving cities of gold out of circles of power, of pain and punishment, wrapping men in leopard skin, tagging them cold, humorless, marking them fit for war, placing them in the line of fire, then measuring it from point of impact to grave. Those of them as were not wounded, we try to save. All our failures reflect a willingness to learn to keep on mass producing these weapons of self-destruction. Somewhere along the line, even the Manson family could give us a Jesus Christ. Lost halfway between bliss and oblivion in a used Ford, the options are endless down a narrow road, desert skirts the dirt lane. Reality is a concurring nightmare, the devil's accident without recall. I've been dreaming in cactus, walking for miles without a soul. And the next poem is the second poem I wrote that evening, which I also reckon references airplanes and airports and what have you. Interesting piece called Dragging the Dam. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead all the way through and hopefully get this done in about half an hour. And if my battery dies, well, then I'll fade out. But I'll stay till the end. Thanks everyone for joining me for this reading. I really appreciate the opportunity. Laying guilt and blame is a lot like dragging the dam, is a lot like acquiring heaps of shame with nowhere to store it but in plain view. A public flogging of your choice ideals is exactly what is needed in this instance. You've gone too far away again, striving for love, covered in sin, less the manner of pretending plus the purge of revealing your true self beneath the skin, an animal in fox clothing, laying the chips where they deal, tossed up and falling, scatterbrain catching, angels in waiting, laying guilt on the ground like a seed in the silt, a river's raging course, a house built on stilts, carried carcass in suitcase through airport, lying through metal detectors, wearing defective shoes, coming up spades in holes in deserts, another mammal delivered quietly into the arms of the Almighty. And the next poem is skipping ahead to Otherwise You Well. An interesting piece. I went to Poland just before the pandemic with my wife. We had a holiday, and this might have a bit of current relevance given the war in Ukraine. I just realized that in this poem I called it the Ukraine, which is an error, but I'll forgive myself this one. So. When the Russians arrive, the town is empty. The streets deserted, not a soul. The women and children have long since been relocated, and the men are hiding in the mountains. The Russians make themselves at home, the way the Germans did, the way all men do in the palaces of war. Later that night, it begins to rain, and it continues to rain for days. It rains so long and hard that eventually the men in the mountains are forced to come down, are driven down by the deluge into the arms of the Russians. This is how my grandfather is caught in Ukraine and sent to Siberia. This is all I know. There's the part about Manchester, the Night Owl Squadron, and the steamboat to Cape Town, but the rest is hearsay. Kochum Praga. I love Praga. Another mural. More graffiti. The thing about Warsaw, Warszawa, I noticed first was the liberation of the public space given over to vandals and art. Willingly, a healthy spirit of rebellion. Forgive, don't forget. Legia. Miechu. Legia. The Polish Premier League sits on the steps of a renovated building smoking woodbines as we pass. Praga hasn't always been this inviting. Miechu means kebab. If kebab were the only thing in the world, a kebab the size and shape of Saint Michael and Florian Cathedral. We walk towards the meeting point, drinking our little monkeys, our marpechki, already noting how beautifully unrestored some of the buildings are, how newly envisioned others. When the bombs were dropped across Vistula River, the people almost forced to go back to their chores, bend their backs, ignore the screaming of planes. Almost. Everywhere, the dash and pea of the Warsaw uprising strikes defiant white paint against the brick. The Legia personnel have been busy making up for the lost time of their grandfathers. My grandfather never spoke about crossing Siberia, nor what might move a man to find his way home. Even when we were playing chess and his two bishops alongside each other, driving my 7-year-old self so determined, so anxious to win, even then to tears, and he would laugh but never give an inch, not once. And those two fucking bishops, even now, where I can, I drive them forward toward my enemies. Their influence spread out in crisscrossing waves. There were stories told after he died about a man who loved cats, catching and skinning cats to survive, and the whiskey over vodka. How perhaps starting a new life, you leave certain things behind. But now, drinking Nalewki along Zapkowska Street, in a small bar in eatery, Psi Flaki, the big fluffy dumplings and stew crammed in, no more chairs, patrons standing out in the thin autumn sun, somewhat thicker wind, and sausage and pierogi in jars, more Nalewki, White Horse whiskey aside. There is so much time I need to somehow find. Cool. And we're nearing the end of my reading. Thanks very much, everybody. This is one of the poems that I published towards the end of Otherwise You Will. Short piece, interesting piece called Rain Over the Ocean. Yesterday, I spoke to my parole officer. He said, there is rain over the ocean and it cannot be fixed. Ceaseless, endless, chopping board waves. We spoke through the glass about the weather, some kind of television drama, a soap opera, a sitcom. I sat and listened to his stories about the war, his grandfather and the lion. I feigned interest. Tomorrow, the parole board will hear me repeat the story about rain over the ocean, how it falls from the heavens in continuous sheets, how not a single fuck is given. Out in the yard, there is a stone under which a knife sharpened by stones. Tiny pebbles I have carried in my stomach like babies, like diamonds that have hatched into an endless child of pain. My lawyer continues to talk about the weather. I feel the change coming over me, and I realize I haven't met you. This hasn't happened yet. That one day I will be truly and torrentially free. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Those were my set pieces for the evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard. I'm glad you got through them without leaving us unexpectedly.
Yeah. Hooray for mobile data. Who would have thought?
Amazing. Very steady as well.
The towers are up even though the sun is down.
Yeah. So we'll see how long you still last, but I think if people have questions in the audience for Richard, you're welcome to raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask away. Ed has one to kick us off with, please.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
Hey, Richard.
Hi, Edward. How are you?
Hi. Well, and you. I'm sorry you can't see an image of me, but this little laptop works better without the visuals. So just to say, it was so satisfying to hear you read some of the poems, which some of them I had read before. But just to hear them in your voice, it was all the little nuanced, where words are combined, for example, or you've got play on meaning. And I'll try to keep it short, but I feel like I have a lot to say. And
my battery's good. My battery's good for the moment.
Okay, so Global Village Idiot and what was the other one? yeah, it was one of the, I think perhaps the third one. I called you up, or doesn't
Yeah, I
necessarily
called you up.
mean
Yeah.
anything anyway, but they reminded me immediately of songs. So the first one reminded me of Leonard Cohen, First We Take Manhattan,
Okay.
um, sort of
Cool.
dystopian vision, and Radiohead came to mind with a lot of your poems. So,
Yeah, I actually quoted two different. I kind of like live on Spotify. I'm great. I'm really big into my music. I quoted two different artists in the poem I called you up. One was Radiohead, and
yes,
the other was the indie artist James with the song
yes,
"Don't Wait That Long." So yeah.
yes, but that's just an aside. I just wanted to say that it feels to me like in a lot of these poems, it's even there in Global Village Idiot, you talk about a new kind of language. And it feels to me as if the poems themselves, they offer a new kind of language in the way that they grapple with, the soullessness and the alienation of our product-driven, profit-driven, technology-driven society. So I think they're immensely skillful in that respect. And I called you up, where you've got the ambiguity of the you and you yeah, coupled the environmental devastation mixed in with it could be, you could read it as personal alienation, but it's
Mm.
yeah. But I'm going to stop rambling, because others may have questions. I might come back, but it feels as if the writing is incredibly free, a lot of the writing, and it's just very fluid, like you could take it anywhere. Was it heavily edited? How did you arrive how did you decide to end the poems or start the poems, or what to leave in, what to take out?
Well, those two poems are not heavily edited. I've look, I do write a lot of poetry. I go through periods in which I do write a lot, and then moments in which life takes me away from poetry. But when I am in a good space with poetry, they tend to flow from start to finish, mostly as we read them. As I say, I have learned recently to do a lot of editing of my work, and I've benefited from editing. Um, but some poems, Global Village Idiot is mostly unedited.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the full caps and the standard case lettering and the full stops, that was part of the first draft. And all the stanzas and the lines and everything came from start to finish. I wrote it at work over about a 30-minute period. And it's mostly stayed the same. I called you up as well as start to finish as was written. I don't recall much editing done to that piece. Yeah, poems like Fast, there's basically no editing done to that. It could do with editing, but sometimes the voice is in the flow, in the free-flowing language which is used. So unless I have to, I don't like to edit, although I have learned that my poetry will benefit in the long term the more I edit it and the more other people edit it. And I do allow editors to edit my work, and I do take a back seat. So yeah, but the musicality of the language, I think, is in the flow from the start to the finish. Yeah, first thought, best thought.
Right.
Yeah,
That's remarkable that those are, as you say, unedited.
mostly edited. Yeah, yeah.
The ones you spoke about, and they're really sustained, and that's enough for
Thanks.
me for now. thank,
Well,
thank you.
thank you, Edward. Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Well,
Hey.
appreciate the comment.
Thanks, Ed. Anybody else who's got any questions or comments? I'm curious to know what the change in the saying that you now accept edits or have realized editing can be beneficial for your work. What was that moment for you?
I don't think it was a moment. It was more the progression of my poetry and having it read by other people, people whose opinions I respect, and poets who've come back to me and said, you know, that works and that doesn't, and also poems that were rejected, and I have a lot of my work rejected by editors and magazines as is the course of things. And when you get poems back and you realize, okay, listen, that didn't really work. And then you try obviously find things that didn't work about it. And then, yeah, I mean, I've taken poems and I've chopped them in half recently, you know, and it's been liberating in a way. There are pieces that don't work that way. But it's good to recognize and important to recognize that when you do need an edit, that you should embrace that and go ahead with it. Creates a better poem. But yeah, I do still like sitting down and writing something and going, that felt good start to finish. I've saved it and it works, you know, and then coming back and polishing it up a bit, that's nice. But not to have to move things around and change sentences and, you know, that's great. But where it needs to happen, it should happen. And yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I totally agree. It can be very freeing to find a poem is actually something smaller than you initially started with, or something like that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Anybody else who has a comment? You're also welcome to type it in the chat if you're shy.
I'm going to put some stuff in the chat. It's a whole lot of links because I'm Mark, where is my chat over there? So yeah, copy paste. So this is like all the stuff I've got. I've got places where you can buy the book. There we go, Amazon and African Books Collective. There's an interview I did with Gary Comiskey for Art Magazine. There's a link to my Facebook page, and there's also a playlist for Otherwise You Will on Spotify. There are 23 poems in Otherwise You Will, and there are 23 songs in the playlist, if that's your thing. You can mix and match the songs to the poems if you want, but generally, yeah, there they are. So, yeah.
Awesome. Ed has put his hand back up, so back to you, Ed.
Hey, I just, if no one wants to add anything else, I was just curious about the title. Did that suggest itself naturally? A lot of the poems very successfully, I think, tackle glib language, dead language, if you like. Yeah, I'm just curious, and was that an easy thing to come up with, or did it just suggest itself?
Well, there's a bit of a story behind it. I started out the book Otherwise You Will with a working title, Dead Malls of America, which was a poem that I wrote and didn't really work as a title, and I accepted that. In August 2019, my wife and I went out to a concert in Delta Park, small intimate concert by the Parlotones. And I know Paul Hodgins, he's a good mate of mine from varsity, well, a mate of mine from varsity, and didn't realize it then, but they've got this routine on stage in which they kind of like banter. And the keyboardist dropped the saying, they were talking about South Africanisms in South Africa, and he said, Otherwise You Will. And I just immediately knew that that was the title of my book. So I stole the title from the Parlotones, and I've said as much to them, and they're happy with that. And Paul had mentioned it was a repertoire that they do on stage, and they've said it often. But it worked because it was, especially after that, because we obviously all went through a pandemic in which some people were, you know, and but it speaks to what we're going through collectively, you know, and also from a South African perspective, how we just kind of like, you know, it's like, okay, things are not that great, but, you know, otherwise you will, you know, and so I thought that'd be a great way to embody you know, the work, as in all else, you know, are we still doing okay? So it speaks to how I reflect on our modern predicament. after all is said and done, do we still have something left? Yeah, so that's how it came about.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent question. Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to add anything before we close off the session for Richard's reading? Last chance. Robert, yes.
Yeah, just it was nice to hear your stuff, Richard. I think you've got a form, a very expandable form that you've found, kind of. I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but it's like you can absorb anything, actually. Very good for sort of post-apocalyptic kind of times we live in, and or pre-apocalyptic at the moment. And I think that your form's been like that all the time. You've just been able to absorb things and play around with words and essentially hold it together with a lot of musical strength. So sort of going on your own, not really part of any literary anything, but that's fine. You kind of go your way and reread it, and it just gives us something back. It gives me something back. So please keep going through the apocalypse.
Thanks, Robert. I'm going to try. These are hard and interesting times, and thanks for that. It's been I know you've been a part of my journey for many years, and I'm grateful to that, having found some of my earlier work and directed me towards the book that was recently published by Deep South. I mean, and it's been a journey of growth. When I started out, it was interesting to think, okay, I have something here. I could easily have lost it along the way. I need to constantly work at it. So, yeah, I've been given a lot of the tools that I have right now, to do this free form thinking, where I absorb stuff and spread it out through the interactions with the South African poetic community, and I appreciate, I appreciate that.
Good.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else who'd like to add anything? Looks like no. Well then, I think we can say that was a fantastic reading, and I'm really glad that your load shedding battery power lasted. We were very lucky to hear you.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry for the seance in the background. It's the candles.
No, it works. Adds to the energy. I see Jacques throwing his hand up here at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, Jacques.
I just want to say I'm so glad these things are recorded, because I literally was able to tune in 3 minutes ago when the power went back on. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your stuff, Richard. And yeah, it's great to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that you got online. I'm glad that I stayed online. In these dark days.
Yeah, so anybody who knows of people who missed out, please let us know. We're happy to send on the link for the recording later on. And Richard, thank you so much for your time and your spirit and sharing your work with us. It's been lovely having you. And we are glad that this time it happened, despite load shedding.
Yeah, twice in a row, and this time I just failed to lie down. I won't. Don't let the bastards drag you down.
No.
Wonderful, thank you.